Yeah, off we go.
You have to say continue. Well, thank you everybody for clicking in to my session. I wasn't quite sure what to call this session. I've got a lot of titles. Small is beautiful. It's the little things that matter. Or something that you sometimes hear is the best things come in small packages. And I really wanted to do this session and present my thoughts about the small stuff, and then invite a discussion with you lot, and then maybe hold a little moment and together create a response to small moments together in our hour. So there'll be a bit of listening, there'll be a bit of chatting, there'll be a little bit of looking around either from your seat, or you might actually want to get up and move at that point, and then there'll be a coming together at the end. So that's my speaker, which I had all set up, and it's got this habit of cutting itself off, so that was that funny noise. I'll have to switch it back on. So my name is Sal Tonge. I think you all know me, and I work as a verbal artist, and so I work with words, either spoken or sung or inferred, because sometimes I work with people who haven't got any words, but they have a sense of language and they have a music of language. So I'm often finding patterns, and sometimes I find myself in my world dancing on a pinhead, just dancing in a tiny moment with somebody. And when Anne-Marie approached me about this project, I was really excited, because it was like, yeah, I'm quite a big personality and I can fill a space with my presentations, but actually deep inside my heart, I dance on pinheads. And I was really excited about that invitation. And I was even more excited because obviously my life took a massive turn in the pandemic, in that all the settings in which I customarily dance on pinheads with people, hospices, care homes, special schools, one-to-ones with people living with complicated health conditions, all that closed down to me. And so as of January this year, when the narrative around us was all about everything opening up, I was trying to get myself going. Again, I was trying to relaunch the work that mattered to my heart. And I was applying for massive jobs. I was applying for, I was tendering for kind of commissions. And I was putting a lot of effort in to big pieces of work, lots and lots of work, lots and lots of thinking for projects that were going to kind of last me a good big chunk of time. And this was going to rebuild my life that had just crumbled. But you know what? I got rejected once, twice, 3 times, 4 times. So I submitted for 4 big jobs and I got rejected from them all. And at that point I thought, what is this all about? And then something happened. I looked in my back garden and I've got a gate, and this gate is at the bottom of my garden and it leads up to a little alleyway, and it's got one of those little wicket things that kind of, there's this bit on the gate and then it's kind of snaps in, and all of a sudden this bit had fallen off my gate. It had dropped off after years of doing perfectly sterling service, snapping my gate shut, holding my gate fastened, and it had fallen off. And a friend of mine came hustling down the garden path, waving this little piece of metal, going, "Oh, your gate's broken, your gate's broken. Look, I have got another piece just like this, and I'm going to fix your gate, and I'm going to get that gate so that it won't flap around in the wind." And I went, wait. My gate needs to flap in the wind, because everything that I've submitted for has has not come to me, my gate needs to blow in the wind to let what needs to come in, and let what needs to go out. And so I just fasten the top of the gate with a bit of string so that it won't bash on its hinges. And there my gate merrily functioned without its little special metal bit. And about a week later, Anne-Marie asked me to be part of this project, thinking about small things. And all of a sudden, everything made sense. And I'm really happy to be thinking about these small things, because it was that small intervention or lack of intervention on my gate that has let this opportunity come in to present with you. Later on, I'm going to be presenting with Mary, doing a session in Snail Beach. I'm going to be doing a session back in a care home. And so lots of little moments are coming into my life, rather than me kind of trying to architect and trying to create these big moments. Little moments are coming in, of variety and joy. And so I wanted to think about those very much. And I've often been called to small stuff. The big story around our culture, I'm just going to set this speaker up, is that things are big and things are strong because they're big, and things are solid. And this is a pop song that I really, really like, and just going to listen to it. Forever. Things are mighty and big, and if you kind of think about it in pop songs, there's lots of songs all around strength and might. And once upon a time, I was chatting with a physicist friend, as you do, and this physicist friend told me something that I didn't know. And I hope I'm not teaching you to suck eggs. Maybe you all knew this, but when I found it out, it really rocked my world, which is that everything is made of atoms and little kind of tiny microscopic subatomic particles. And these things are held together by a special force. Did you know this? And there's a special force that holds things together that's called mu. Like what a cat does. It sounds like what a cat does. Mu. And this force actually repels things. So the stronger something is, the stronger the repelling of this mu, this force that actually forces things apart. A little bit like when you get two poles of a magnet and you try and join them together and they just won't join, you feel that resistance. Well, there is this thing called mu that holds things together by keeping things apart. And so at this really tiny, weeny level, we are constantly being reminded of the small bits that join us up, these tiny little particles that make things strong because they're apart. And so I wanted to tell you a story, and this story was told to me by a friend called Liz, and she tells it a lot, and it seems to be a good story to tell today. And this story is set in a school. So what I'd like you to do is just close your eyes and just imagine for a moment school. This is not a school today that maybe you go in with brightly coloured chairs and lots of lovely interactive whiteboards and all of these things. It's an old school, maybe a school like you remember, or maybe a school that you've seen in kind of Victorian picture books. The chairs are wooden. There's a big blackboard at the front. The floor is wooden and the desks are little angled, lift top lidded affairs. There's a stove at the front of the class, which is conveniently near the school teacher's desk. And the stove has a little rail around it on which all the children can drape their coats and mittens in the winter when they come in, all covered in snow and rain. And this is the classroom in which our story starts. And it was this time of year. School was breaking up for Easter. And here in this little classroom, there was a raggle-taggle bunch of children. It was that sort of classroom where the littlest ones were taught at the front and the biggest ones were taught at the back, and they would go and look after the littlest ones on the break time. And the teacher reached into his own desk, and out of his desk, he pulled a silver angel, a beautiful statue of a glistening angel with wings and a smiling face and long robes. And the statue was just about as high as the teacher's hand. And as the teacher showed this statue to the children, it glinted in the spring sunbeams that were breaking in through the window. "Now, children," said the teacher, "I'm holding a competition. Over the Easter holidays, I want you to go out and I want you to look all around and I want you to look here and there and everywhere. And whichever child brings me back the smallest, most precious, shiny object, well, that child will win this silver angel." Now, I told you that the children were poor and they'd never seen such a glorious, exquisite statue. And each of them wanted to own that shining, shining thing and have it and take it home and put it on their humble mantelpieces. And then the bell rang and it was Easter holidays. Oh, the clatter, oh, the noise, oh, the batter as all the children left the classroom, banging down desks, grabbing scarves, pulling their younger brother by the hand, and off they went and back home. And the holidays began, just like they've begun here. And the children were out and about, and all the way through the holidays, whether they were helping with the jobs at home or whether they were having a moment just to themselves to play, they were looking for a small, precious, shiny object because they wanted to win that statue. And then the holidays were finished and everybody was back to school. And the children gathered in, the littlest ones were at the front and the oldest ones were at the back. The rail was around the coal stove, although it hadn't been lit because, of course, we were now late April. There was no need for coal now until at least, November, I would think. And there the children sat at their desks and the teacher took out the silver statue, the beautiful angel, and sat it on his desk. He said, "Right, children, who has brought me a small, precious, tiny object?" Well, the children rumbled in their pockets. They rummaged in their bags. They rummaged in their satchels, those of them that had a satchel. And then they brought their objects to the front. And the teacher's desk was full of glittering treasures. There were little buttons that had been cut from a glove. There were little tiny bits of mica stone that the children had found whilst they were playing up in the spoil heaps. Some children had bought silver bottle tops. One child had bought an eye that came out of their dolly's head. And eventually all these objects were put on the teacher's desk. And indeed, the desk glittered with these shiny, precious objects. But then there was a bang of the door. And the teacher looked round and, you know who it was? It was little Tom. He lived the furthest away and he was the smallest boy with the shortest legs and he had the furthest distance to walk every morning. He was always late and today it was the first day of term and he was even later than usual. And little Tom came in all of a fluster. Tom was so tiny, but he always looked smaller because his clothes were always so big. Do you know why? Because they'd been handed down from his older brothers and sisters. They had frayed cuffs and holes in the elbow. And little Tom came shuffling forward, but he had something in his hand. And he came to the front of the classroom and he said, "Oh, I'm terribly sorry I'm late. I'm so sorry I'm late. But I found this and I don't know what to do with it. It's a little bird and he's not very well. Can you make him better?" And Tom opened his grubby little hands, and there in his hands was a tiny little fledgling, a little tiny bird who had tumbled out of his nest. And as master saw that he was indeed dead, lying limp in little Tom's sweaty hands. "Oh, I'm sorry," said the teacher. "I don't think there's anything I can do for that little bird. He's made his first precious little flight and he's tumbled out of his nest and he hasn't quite made it. I'm afraid that bird is dead, Tom. Even a master like me, I can't fix it." And Tom looked down at that little bird and then looked up at the master. "Are you sure?" And the master shook his head. And at that moment, a little tear welled up in Tom's eye. And that tear rolled down his hot, sweaty little cheek, and it plopped off the edge of his cheek, and it landed on the desk, amidst the buttons, amidst the shiny stones, amidst the dolly's eyes and the milk bottle tops. And there was Tom's tear. And the teacher looked up. He said, "I know who's won this silver angel. I know who's brought me the most precious, tiny, shiny object. That little tear of Tom. That tear of compassion and of love for that little bird. That is the most precious thing." And the teacher took that little bird from Tom's hand and he popped it in a box and he promised him he would bury the bird later. And then he gave Tom the shiny silver angel, which, my goodness, it was almost as big as Tom's head. He'd never had anything quite so precious and all to himself. And that's the story of Tom's precious tear. So I wanted to tell that thing. It's a nice little story, isn't it? About a small, precious object and a small little slice of love. And a lot of the work that I like to do, this dancing on pinheads when you're holding a little pattern with somebody musically, or sharing a story, sharing a bit of a moment, is as precious as that moment that that story talks about. And I've been really influenced by the work of a woman called Barbara Fredrickson. And she's influenced me for many years. Barbara Fredrickson works with the science of happiness and the science of health and happiness and of positive psychology. And Barbara Fredrickson talks very much about, rather than seeing the world as one big solid thing, we need to see it for all its little components, all those little tiny micro moments, a little bit like those little tiny atoms that are held together with those little resistant forces between them, that force that we call mu. Those little tiny objects like the sparkling treasures set out on the teacher's desk. And she talks about micro moments of positivity. And she talks very much that we can spend our time looking for the big happiness or the big moment, or maybe like me, looking for that big project that is going to bring around my career recovery. Or maybe our work is to really look in the world for micro moments of positivity. And I'm just going to share this little slide with you because she talked about sharing micro moments of positive emotions. And she identified these 10 positive emotions. And I think what I'd like to do is, if we could just unmute everybody, Mandy, and see what people feel in response to these moments, this idea that there could be a moment of gratitude or serenity, a moment of profound interest when something just absolutely flirts with your attention and hooks you in. A moment when despair becomes hopefulness, when something turns around, or you feel that lift, or a moment of absolute awestruckness. I find myself often finding moments of amusement when I really make myself laugh, or I see something, especially with animals. Animals can amuse me. Pride is something I have to work on a little bit. I won't let myself be proud. But certainly I find joy in the simplest moment. And also she talks importantly about love. Pop songs talk about the always and forever, or, you know, we're solid as a rock, you know, nothing can break our love, you know, looking for that huge big love. But Barbara Fredrickson talks about micro moments of love. That moment when you feel profound love for somebody who's just delivered you your Tesco shopping when you were desperate for milk. And you feel that huge love for that person for that moment, and then they're gone and you're gone, and that's it. When I was vaccinating, I became a vaccinator in the height of the pandemic vaccination program, and those micro moments of love when people sat in the chair and I would just pop the vaccine into them and they would weep sometimes, and there was true love between us, and then they'd leave your vaccination pod and you'd never seen them again, but you'd shared that moment of love. Oh. And all of these things can be hugely inspiring, and we can be out and about doing our nature noticing, as the project is so good at encouraging us to do, and feeling so utterly inspired. So I just wanted to open up the conversation and just see what people's responses are to that. If you want to speak, maybe you could raise your hand if you wanted to respond to that list at all and share any thoughts about my little presentation.
Well, I'll go then. I'm sorry, Kat. Go on, Cans, you say something.
You go ahead, Mandy.
Okay. My micro moment was yesterday when the postman delivered my medication, because I was down to like one pill left, and I'm thinking, oh, please come today, please come today. Yeah, and he knocked on the door and he bought my medication. So I was like, I love you. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sure he felt that love in return.
He did. He was quite chatty, actually. Normally he's quite miserable, but he was quite chatty yesterday.
He was probably love bombed by you.
Yeah, he probably was. Yeah.
And then you set up these little tiny feedback loops. It does happen. And Barbara Fredrickson's research went a bit deeper, and she looked at mirroring. And actually what happens is that when you are free and express that love, that gratitude, that joy, then there is that moment when we do, because we're social animals, we will replicate that. So the postman probably felt better for it too. And it has been proved, you know, she's kind of done like blood tests and looked at serotonin, dopamine, cortisol levels and all of that. So yeah, you and the postman probably set up a little feedback loop.
Yeah, we had our moment.
Right. And it's gone before you even know it. And I think with noticing, sometimes you need the scaffolding, the framework to actually notice these things. Otherwise, they're gone. It's a little bit like that work that Robert McFarlane's doing. You know, if we don't name things, they'll disappear.
Yeah.
Kanj, did you want to say something?
Yes. If I could add another lovely word to that list that Barbara Fredrickson had, and which you had on your screen, and that word's kindness.
Yeah.
I've just completed an exhibition on kindness with another artist, but one of the things is that too has a way of, if not mirroring, but it becomes a more infectious sort of quality when you're kind to someone, or someone's kind to you. You kind of want to reciprocate because you have that warm glow for the same reasons, which is serotonin, dopamine, oxytocin, all being triggered by these little acts that touch your lives or touch the lives of others.
Yeah.
And I'll give you one little example. Just before, a couple of hours before our exhibition was to open, I was about to leave the house and I was all nervous and agitated because it was the opening night, and I could feel the stress hormones pumping. And when I opened the door, I noticed a little pink envelope with a bunch of daffodils just put. It was leaning against my front door. So I stopped to just pick up the flowers and open the note. And it was a few words from my neighbor to say, thinking of you, you will be brilliant, good luck, and I'll be there soon. That's all it was with the flowers. And that really touched me. And things like that, you don't remember. That warm glow kind of remained with me for many hours, I think. And it's one of those little gestures. Didn't take a lot of effort, but she thought of someone else, and she really made a difference to those, that moment for me.
And it's an inspiring story to hear that story of that small kindness, as it encourages, oh yeah, I could drop a bunch of flowers around to somebody. Is there somebody that I could send a card to? Little messages like that, they just mean the world, don't they?
They do.
Mary?
Yeah, interesting. I think this works in reverse too, because sometimes small things, small irritations or upsets can become huge. And I'm thinking a few things actually recently for me, very silly things like a bit of technology not working or something like that.
Yeah.
And actually, my son was here recently, and he said, I was talking to him about it, and he said, the thing is, sometimes he's talking about me, and he's absolutely right. He said, when that happens, you panic. You don't stop and think, hang on, what has happened? It was something very silly. Oh yes, the radio suddenly went wrong because I touched something. And so I'm going, oh God, what have I done? Oh dear. And there's this great big thing, I've ruined the radio, it's always all broken, it's never going to work again. And that can spill over into actually much more important things if you're not careful, because somehow your whole, the chemicals are working the other way. Your stress levels are going up. Your fright and flight things are all going up.
Yeah.
And actually, sometimes you just need to say, come on, this is just a little blip. Step back, forget about it for a bit, then perhaps look at it again. It's a small thing. You don't have to make a big deal out of it.
Yeah.
Because that is going to impact on things that perhaps really are quite important. And this is little, it's not important. But it's very easy to let those things become the big issues in our lives.
Yeah. Especially when quantitatively, I can never say the word, quantitatively, we have got so many technological interfaces.
Yeah.
You're when you said it was a technological thing, I was thinking, oh, Mary's going to tell us a computer story, but no, it was the radio.
It's something silly.
The radio was the one that I wasn't expecting to go wrong, because your radio is kind of old tech, but quantitatively we interact with so many little technological connections that there's micro moments, each of those moments.
There's been others. There's been the heating heating controls and the phone and several other things in recent days. It's been a bit like that, but they're all of them actually little things. They're not, you know, they're not big in the context of a lifetime. They're tiny.
Yeah,
but they can become so much. They fill your head.
Yeah, definitely. And it is part of our emotional intelligence to identify them as such.
Yes.
And not emotions kind of win the day, and actually have this way of looking at them as micro moments. And we can peak micro moments and low micro moments, and they are just exactly that. And a little bit like that little metal catch on my gate. It just
yes, exactly. Yes. Oh, that was another one. I had a problem with the door lock as well. Exactly the same thing. Yeah.
And what
tiny things.
I love these stories. I think these stories are really important for people to be telling each other. And when we talk about storytelling, these are the stories of our time that have such value and can help as we tell the story of our time with technology, with nature, with the sky, with our noticing. I think they're helpful stories. Otherwise,
and very often that sharing actually brings a kind of perspective on those things that puts them in their right place.
Yeah. And as somebody who has called myself a storyteller, I often, and maybe Suzanne, you find the same thing too, people say, oh, I'm not a storyteller, I can't tell stories like that. Well, everybody can tell stories. We can all tell that small story of the flowers on the doorstep and the note. We can all tell the story of the frustration with the radio. And they're just as important as being able to tell those big, epic folk sagas that performance storytellers have rehearsed up. They all have value. That's what I think. So I was going to set us a task, if that would be okay, because the other thing that is very true is that you can spend too long sitting at these screens. So I was going to just hold a little bit of time, and I'm not going to play any music. I was just going to put a picture on the screen for 5 minutes, and I was going to invite you to do some noticing. And you will know what you need to notice. It will flirt with your attention straight away. And, you know, that is what will pique your interest. And I'd just like you to do a bit of noticing for 5 minutes and then jot it down in the chat bar, so that we, just as a line in the chat bar, and you can write it, you can revise it, you might notice something else. And then I was going to get us all to submit our chat, and then between us we will write a group poem of our small noticings on this ordinary yet extraordinary Tuesday afternoon. So I'm just going to hold the time, and then I'll play a bell to summon us back, and I'll just put a picture up on the screen so that you're not looking at me picking my nose, doing me noticing. And you can notice from your seat, or you might want to go actually straight outside and do some noticing from your back door, but you will hear me ring the bell when it's time for us to come back. And yeah, just jot what you notice in the chat. Is that okay? Yeah, thumbs up. Great. Okay, I'll just put us a little picture up, and let the 5 minutes begin. Where's my picture? This is a little tiny bell. When we were clearing Tim's mum's house, it was on the side, and it's just got the most lovely little ring. So I'm very happy to have that little bell. Everybody coming back. So I hope you had a nice little time of noticing. And now the idea would be to write what you noticed just into a little line. If you want to, it might be that you would just like to just notice for the sake of it and not write anything into the chat. But wouldn't it be fun if we kind of just took a little photograph of a Tuesday afternoon of noticing just the tiniest slice of what's happening today? And if you want to write into the chat, and then we'll have a big submit. Oh, great. Suzanne started us off. Thank you.
Well, I thought I had, but it doesn't seem to have taken.
Well, let's just take a few minutes because I wrote something ready to submit. I'm going to do it again.
Yeah, I'll do it again. Yeah.
So. Oh, great. Great. I like Jen's comment as well. It's all part of it. She's clearly noticing her cat, the cat and the puppy conversation. And this is what a Tuesday afternoon feels like, you know. And I know we've got a participant on from Kansas as well, and I wonder. Yeah.
There we are. It's got one.
There we are. I don't know if Kansas, we're in the night time or the evening. Certainly for us lot, there's this Tuesday afternoon feeling going on.
It's 9:18 in the morning in Kansas.
Oh, early in the morning. Oh, great.
Nice to see you again, David.
And you.
It's a bit later for you today, isn't it? It was early hours of the morning last time, wasn't it?
I have slept since last time but nice to be part of this morning with you ladies.
It's nice to have you here.
And where is here for you, Sal?
I live in a village called Stones, which is in southwest Shropshire. Quite a rural area, upland area. I live beneath a big set of rocks called the Devil's Chair. A lot of people know that part of Shropshire.
Devil's Chair?
Yeah, it's a good place. Yeah.
I will have to Google that. You've piqued my interest there.
Yeah. So also, I know that this group is going to explores the work of Mary Webb, who was very much inspired by this landscape in particular. So if you read The Golden Arrow and Gone to Earth, they were set in this community, the novels of Mary Webb. Yeah, full of the folklore and the essence of this part of the world. So this is what a Tuesday afternoon or a Tuesday morning in Kansas feels like. This is what this moment in time feels like. Meditative, looking at different levels. The shadow is on the absence of light. You can feel the warmth of the sun on the bare, barkless world. Fern leaves have many tiny leaflets which combine to make one large entity. Glyn is over 90, but he's walking down his field to check the sheep and lambs. Tick, tick, tick goes the indoors. Tweets and bleats are welcome on the sigh of the wind at the back door. A jackdaw flies past with a twig in its beak. Birdsong, so much birdsong. The breeze on my skin, the air, so much of it. A new growth in the trees fluttering, a need to move my body. The outside black cat has reappeared from winter, and I spotted a blackbird perched on a tree with twigs dangling from her mouth, clearly preparing her nest. Raindrops on the washing line, and a soggy blanket, and a poorly cat that I'm trying to keep the puppy away from. What a lovely word posting, a word picture of all that noticing. And what I really like around that is if we look at it back with the 10 noticings of Barbara Fredrickson, 11 with Kanji's edition of noticing kindness. There's lots of things there that have piqued our interest. Lots of moments that we've just become interested in, the birds and the sudden appearance of a cat, and the sudden flight of a jackdaw, and suddenly, you know, we become aware of the fern leaves scoping into these incredible awestruck moments. And sometimes I just wanted to finish off with another moment. I'm reading a lot of work by Sharon Blackie. Is anybody else aware of Sharon Blackie? The work of Sharon Blackie. And she's very inspiring, and she's writing a book. She's written a lot of books, and the book that I'm reading at the moment is called The Enchanted Life. And what's interesting in our noticing is that we've named a lot of things. We've identified the jackdaw, we've identified the ferns, we've identified the magpies. And one of the things that Sharon Blackie talks about is, well, what if you don't know its name? You can still actually have a very beautiful moment of gratitude, serenity, interest in something that you don't know the name of. It doesn't stop you being connected to it. And I think that's really revolutionary, to still pay attention to our connection without being able to name. So I just wanted to show this little image, because I don't know what this is. And I'm not really interested what it is. I think I know what it's called. But I was wondering if we could use the chat again to just write without naming this, whether you know the name of this thing or not. Just write what it is without naming it. Here's a little quick challenge. If you'd like to offer up a noticing of this into the chat. Ah, gorgeous. It'd be great just to see what people call this thing without naming it. Because sometimes the naming is pretty arbitrary. Yeah, And when you start to get inventive with naming, you'll never be wrong. Naming in this way, through describing. I think it's a speedwell, but it's a lot more fun to call it a lawn button, or a blue striped peepo, a blue-green gleam in the undergrowth, a little teeny blue flower of April, tiny, bright blue flower, lilac meadow, needlessly crushed as I ran through the field. A tiny little moment with a tiny little thing. So that is my presentation. Oh, Suzanne's just said something else in the chat. Let me have a little look. A green bottom nettlebug. What great, love it. You know what it was, and you spotted it, and you still remember it. I mean, what a thing. You know, this little green spotted nettlebug was just going about his business, and now he or she is elevated to notoriety here on this Zoom, and people in Kansas actually know about this green spotted nettlebug. Extraordinary, the power of a story to elevate a tiny little moment. So that is my presentation finished. And but we have got 5 minutes left, I think, three minutes left, and it would just be interesting to get some responses or some thoughts about going forward with our noticing, and you know, as we're going to continue being part of the Library to Lane project, you know, we're really down into the smallest catalogues here. So if we open up the chat, the microphones, and it'd be great to hear what people respond with.
I think noticing the small stuff people became more aware during the pandemic, because more people were going out walking and they were noticing things that they hadn't noticed before. And they were getting quite excited about things like that. And hopefully they'll continue to do that, to notice the small stuff and not get back into this crazy world again of all the big things. But there's also a book that I read last year. It was called October by, I've written her name down somewhere, Katja Balin. And it's aimed at older teenagers, but it's about this young girl who lives in the woods with her father, and she makes up stories. What is their story? You know, that tree hasn't got its story, or that bird hasn't got a story yet. What is its story? And that helped me, I think, to notice the smaller things, think, what is that story? You know, what's the story behind that? That's it's an easy read. It's a nice read. I say it's aimed at older teenagers, but it is nice for adults to read.
To tell those small stories.
That's it. And this girl ends up in hospital, but she was saying, this is not my story. This is not how my story is, because she wanted to do more. So I won't say any more in case you're all reading. But it's a nice book to read. I got it because my birthday's in October, and it came out in October, so I thought, October.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
I think noticing and speaking small stuff is some of the most radical work we can do. You know, sometimes when the world feels gripped in a pandemic, when we feel that there are political circumstances that we were never part of the creation of and we're living the legacy of, sometimes you can feel really disempowered. But to notice, and most importantly, to tell about the small stuff, the frustrations with the radio, the missing piece of metal on the gate, even if you don't know what something's official name is, but to speak it can be really important to create connections between each other, just like Kanji's tale of the daffodils on the doorstep. They're radical acts by which we all become agents for change and healing. Suzanne?
I was washing up the other day. I'm always washing up. We'd seen a kite flying around the area for a while, and it was like, yeah, but you can't note it down on your garden bird watch unless it's used your garden, it's landed in your garden. I was just washing up the other day, and I was so annoyed because, you know, I'd asked other people to wash up and they hadn't, so I was washing up. And then I saw the red kite through the window and saw him fly past, and he landed in the ash tree in our garden. And he was only there for a minute, and then he took cover and goes, yes, I can put him on the list.
That was why you had to wash up.
Exactly.
Washing up, you would never...
It gives the whole washing up meaning, doesn't it? Because you can look out the window, you can watch the sparrows, but then you get this amazing moment. And if I hadn't have been there washing up, I wouldn't have seen him land in our tree.
Yeah. Wow. That's epic. It's epic. And, you know, to get a little bit geeky, you know, biochemically, that was an incredibly healing moment for you, because whilst you're washing up with gritted teeth, you're pulsing out all this adrenaline, all this cortisol, and actually the elation and the joy of witnessing that buzzard, right? You know, that feeling of pride that Barbara Fredrickson talks about, you know, yes, I got a buzzard in my ash tree, in my garden, is just that micro moment whereby you biologically, you turn those hormones around. And the benefits for your biology are immense in that moment. Beautiful. I love it. Joy. And it might be that as we continue through the project of Library in the Lane, that some of these micro stories of these turnaround moments, of these awarenesses, of, you know, by structuring these noticings into these stories, we realize that we're not just noticing, we're telling a story which is about our healing, which is about our transforming.
Well, isn't it? I mean, that's absolutely critical, isn't it? Because that's actually what our lives are. They're made up of all those little moments, those small stories. They are exactly the fabric of our lives and our memories and our dreams.
Yes. And
we tend to think about the big context, but that's not how our kind of consciousness and our sense of identity evolves. It isn't through that, it's through those little things. Yeah.
Absolutely. And our culture has told us that, you know, unless you've got like a tome of work or letters after your name, you've done that big, significant, solid as a rock stuff, that actually, you know, it's the poor relation. And I think this must have been the way that, you know, Charlotte Byrne and Georgina Jackson were working. You know, they were women working in this very male-dominated sort of academic world, with their noticings, and but making this significant contribution like we're doing with these micro moments.
Yeah, thank you, Sal.
So we're going to do, Mary and I have got a moment planned, well, more than a moment, it's 2 hours.
2 hours.
Where we're going to hold a space together for yourself. Maybe you'd want to bring a friend along. This is a real world encounter where we want to look at these smallest anecdotes, tiny sayings, where we're really going to look at these micro stories that all come together to create this culture, this oral culture that we live in. So there's a date for your diary at Snail Beach Village Hall. So it'd be lovely if you wanted to come along, and I'm sure Mandy will be drenching everybody with that poster when the time is right.